All right, so there's a new combat thing for Rebirth. Max put out a video. Luckily, he was able to play the game. Kind of low-key jealous, but now I can watch it for myself. And this is purely based on the combat, which is my shit. So let's go ahead and watch it. See what he's got to say. See what he's got to show.
What's up, dudes? Max here. We're back with our second video of impressions of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. For any of you guys that might have missed the previous video, which was a general overview on the two demos that were available from the Tokyo Game Show build, I got to give some impressions on a whole bunch of stuff, but to be real, there's a couple more that I think we really need to go into detail of, which is how much of stuff is changing in the combat and how much stuff is changing in the world and exploration of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yep.
Right now is the combat. So let's get into it. Before we get started, big thanks to Square Enix. They gave us access to the TGS build a little while ago.
Would have been nice!
So we can finally get our hands on it, and I got a chance to play through it several times.
Would have been nice!
A huge thanks to them for letting us capture footage, which you have to understand is also kind of uncommon in these moments of preview, that they were confident.
Okay, wait. Okay, so that's cool. You can enlarge, if you see that on the top right, so you can hit the button, hit the attack button, then like charge it. So that's pretty cool. Successfully guarding against attacks fills the Vengeance gauge, which can be consumed with triangle to enter Vengeance mode, increasing Red 13's attack power and dodge speed. So it's kind of like Blood Moon in a way, where it gives him like Berserk, he hits harder and he's faster and stuff like that. But he's not really Berserk. Oh, okay, and then can be activated at any time, but will last longer according to how full the gauge is. So if you if you parry, he gets more meter. Maybe that's what those pips are.
Enough to show us, like, here's just what you can do with our game, have fun, and show your audience that's
got to be what it is.
Me personally, so let's get right into it.
Yeah, that's
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth
that has
is
to
going
be
to feel
right?
ultimately familiar to a lot of people that played Final Fantasy VII Remake, and this is a good thing. Final Fantasy VII Remake combat was amazing almost throughout the entirety of the game. Although it had a few caveats, I'd say some of my biggest personal gripes, and that of many, was some of the aerial enemies in the game. Fighting aerial combat was just a bit rough in many of those situations with characters that didn't have ranged attacks. And there's a lot of consideration put into this game for that, which is a very good thing. Early on, talking about the first portion of the demo where you're fighting with Sephiroth, you start to immediately see the differences in gameplay from the first Final Fantasy VII Remake. Notably with Cloud, if you hold down the square attack, you do the normal, like, circular sort of like AoE attack. However, the Punisher mode has been sort of revamped. There's a much different follow-up attack that Punisher mode has when Cloud assumes the stance and he can counter attacks and stuff like that.
Oh, it knocks him.
Zips left and right.
He knocks him up in the air.
Going if you press the button, I think it's kind of crazy. Outside of that, there is some pretty unique stuff that happens on your assigned attacks now, and this is going into synergy abilities.
I wonder if they took out the Berserk.
Something that I think is pretty smart. The ATB gauge in Final Fantasy VII is kind of required for you to do anything cool. Outside of that, you're essentially guarding or just whacking monsters, and if things are out of the way or not attacking you, that character ends up being kind of useless. So what they did is on the R1 button, there's these synergy like abilities, and they're different than the big expensive synergy attacks. The synergy abilities work together with the other party members in that party. It seems like there's going to be more of these in the game, but the ones in the demo were kind of uniform amongst every single character you can play as. So Cloud and Sephiroth had a couple per, where if you play as Sephiroth, Cloud helps you out to do unique attacks, and if you play as Cloud, Sephiroth helps you out to do unique attacks, and they're a little different. Like, they actually assist the character in different ways, which is awesome. And you'll notice this when you get to the other portions of the demo with the rest of the team, how the team members have different synergistic abilities with everybody else. These cost 0 ATB, meaning you can do them at any time. They are sort of range dependent. Granted, Tifa and Cloud.
See that bodyguard? Cloud's already simping for Aerith. Look at that. Go back. Where is it? Where is it? Damn it!
You can do them at any time. They are sort of range dependent. Granted, Tifa and Cloud have this like big wind-up charge attack that smacks the ground super hard, but is really shallow. However, if you're playing with Tifa and you utilize
What?
Cloud,
Okay,
pressing
what?
their
You saw it.
synergy attack has Tifa jumping on Cloud's sword.
Yeah,
as
that's
Cloud
sick. Look at
hurls
her,
Tifa
dude.
into the air
She can do
towards
Omni
potentially
Strike
aerial enemies or even grounded enemies. So it
in the
allows
air.
a character that is normally like bound to the ground to get in there.
That's
and
crazy.
Get a bit of damage and start building up her ATB, which is great.
Reverse
Already we have
Gale.
solutions to problems of the original Final
Look
Fantasy
at her
VII
go,
remake.
bro.
And this isn't just offensive stuff. There is defensive abilities that Barret and Red 13 have because they're naturally more defensive. We'll talk about their gameplay a little bit later. But
Yeah,
outside
there
of
it is,
that,
Bodyguard.
The synergy abilities are great, and these
Oh, you
things
can do it with
just
Tifa,
allow
too.
you more
Okay.
ways to utilize your characters and build ATB bars for
That's
your big
hers,
giant synergy
specifically.
attacks, which we'll
All
talk
right.
about in a second. The other character I want to talk about that's playable, albeit briefly, is
Wait a second.
talk about in
Let me read.
second. The
Let me
other
read
character I want to
this.
talk about.
Attack and then hold. Landing a certain number of attacks will allow you to perform branching finishers like Pierce or Swords Dance. The triangle filling your limit gauge. Okay, press R1 to enter retaliation stance. See, this is what I thought that Sephiroth would have. Is that I thought initially, whenever I first saw this video, the one before, that he would have different stances, and I was right. While in this stance, press square at the right time to parry an incoming attack. That probably builds your meter more, and you can just switch back to the other stance, and then...
Albeit briefly, is Sephiroth. You don't get to do a ton with him in this demo, except a pretty big boss fight where you try to like utilize a lot of his attacks and wait for his limit breaks and stuff like that. He just straight has a warp ability, right? And to explain that, every character has essentially a dodge function on circle. As I explained in the previous video, dodge is gone, or proper dodge materia is gone. Every character has that same dodge animation they had from Final Fantasy VII Remake, and now it's just mapped to the circle button, and it's kind of good. Allows your characters to sort of get out of the way relatively quick, and now we have proper functional dodges on every character in the game. Sephiroth, like I said, was a crazy warp that just zipped him from one spot of the screen immediately to the next, so he could zoop in crazy fast to show how OP he is. And that's very fun, right? Again, Sephiroth has some pretty unique stuff on his like stances where if he assumes a stance, he has this like parry swipe of some kind where he'll deflect enemy attacks. It was kind of hard to time this because the early enemies in the game don't attack too much. It was neat to see Sephiroth just essentially like know what my opponent is going to do and just smack their limbs out in every single way. I feel like there's going to be some crazy speed runs with Sephiroth showing that, wow, he just looks like an absolute god in comparison to these poor enemies because, yeah, that's kind of...
You can count on me.
Game. Sephiroth's very fun, and there's a lot of familiar attacks that you might see him doing in games like Dissidia and stuff like that. So, yes, a very well-realized portion of this character is in here. Talking about other things that can happen, synergy abilities with characters. We talked about synergy stuff and how cool these synergy attacks are per character. Even the devs said there's going to be ways to evolve these synergy attacks in some ways with skill trees in some fashion. This was said in interview from the director, so we don't see that directly in here. But like I said earlier, building the synergy attacks is super smart.
Wait a second, is that the size of her arcane ward, man? No way. Radiant ward. Oh, that's different. That's a new ability.
This was
okay.
said in interview from
what
the
does
director,
that do?
So we don't see that directly in here, but like I said
I
earlier,
wonder
building these synergy
what that
attacks
does.
is super smart because how do you build the pips that are down there near the character HP bars?
There
how
we
do
go.
You build up these little stocks that build up towards your synergy abilities. Each synergy attacks costs like 2 pips per character that you want to synergize with, and all you have to do is just use your ATB gauge on attacks. I don't think it was every single ATB usage. Like, I don't think you can use an item and have that contribute towards it. It was mostly if you're using it towards, like, hitting the enemy or manipulating battle in some way. But again, I don't have a full and descript way to describe like what contributes to the pip gauge. All it really seems like if you do big ATB attacks with characters, yeah, that contributes pips to the gauge. So the cool part is that, yeah, there's about 2 pips per character, right? And then you get to synergize with that character and output. However, synergy abilities also have crazy gimmicks where if you do this synergy attack, it activates this thing that is like, oh, now if you did it with this character, she gets infinite MP for a limited period of time. The other one I think was an increase of like limit break levels and extending the duration of enemy stagger gauge. So the cool part is that, yeah, synergy abilities like synergy attacks, these things give you bonuses. And I don't know if that can be modified or anything, but there is reasons to do them that will significantly adjust how a fight works.
I think the best way to go about doing this is probably when you're controlling your main character, you do all your shit, and then the two characters that do have like synergy abilities like ready, you use those, build up the meter, and then swap and optimize that way. So once you get the two pips built, then you can do like the synergy ability with the offline with the characters that you're not currently controlling, and then while that's going, you hotkey and then you keep controlling your main character.
Now, outside of all of the live combat stuff, there's a ton of stuff that's happening in the menus with like leveling up in materia and all this crazy stuff. But the last thing I really want to mention is just another thing that I think I love about Final Fantasy VII Remakes and Rebirth's combat. And it's the fact that they are trying to make this as close to an action game while still having an RPG experience. And how do I know this? Well, they added a just frame timing parry. Every single character in the game now, if you press the guard ability, which is on R1, right at the same time when an enemy attacks you, in Rebirth, you get this huge attack splash. It slows down time and it causes like a pretty big chunk of stagger gauge against the opponent. Almost every time I seemingly landed a parry, it felt like the enemies I was fighting like just staggered immediately. It was like, whoa, holy crap. And the crazy part is that I tried testing it. I'm like, wait, does this just work with like the regular characters? I don't have footage of the entirety of this, but I tried it with nearly everybody in the party. And yeah, Red 13 can do it. Barrett could do it. Aerith could do it. It's funny to see this big elephant like running at Aerith, and she's like, boom, get this bitch off me. It's very cool, man. So the nice part is that they added in some pretty tight window timing for character attacks now.
But is it frame
they
perfect?
Made it so that if you're defensive, they gave you a lot of really cool defensive things you can do. But even talking about defensive stuff, yeah, Red 13 has like a vengeance mode. His vengeance mode is specifically defensive. He gets buffs from defending attacks, and I was not ready for Red 13 to be a defensive.
Okay, so the vengeance mode on the bottom left, I think that's it builds
to be
as he's doing his shit.
Character, but it seems like I still don't fully understand how to use vengeance mode. Like, it's a thing where I was trying to figure out every single character and what they do, and Red's obviously new, so I was messing around with him, and it feels like he might be a little bit more nuanced. So if you want to fully utilize him in the party, there's some stuff to really figure out with vengeance mode a bit later on if we get a bit more time. So
I mean, I think it's pretty simple. You just because it said in the description, with the regular attacks, that's how you build. But I'm sure with the ATB, because vengeance mode doesn't consume like any it doesn't run off of ATB. They're not correlated. You just use ATB abilities that he has, and then that probably fills vengeance mode as well. And then whenever it gets to an amount that you are comfortable with using, then you can do it. But chat, look at the bottom left here. 1117. Did the last game have that? I don't know.
So, talking a bit more about like how combat works, how does the systems complement combat in the game? Well, we don't see the same like universe level up system that was in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 for each one of the weapons. However, there is some pretty interesting stuff on the menus when you go to the items of the characters. These systems aren't all in place yet as of right now, obviously, in this demo of the game. But there seems to be some sort of like weapon mastery going on in Rebirth. The thing I can compare this to is maybe what's happening in Crisis Core, where you get a mastery of the Buster Sword and
no, that was an original mechanic in Remake, where for each weapon they had a specific condition that you had to do. For example, Buster Sword, I think you had to use like Braver 10 times, or it was something. But no, this has not changed at all.
Unlock certain things. I did see stuff like that where there was like a check mark next to each of the characters' weapons and like a level up bar.
Okay.
So there's something going on with you utilizing certain weapons that characters have, and those will properly level up and give you buffs in some way. There was also passive abilities that characters have that had nothing in the demo currently, but characters will have passives. And yeah, the other characters that are not fighting with you in your current party, your active 3-member party, are doing stuff on the outside and fighting, but you just can't directly control them. So I don't know if that's going to contribute to this passive stuff or allow you to modify them in some way outside of combat. Speaking of that combat, yeah, combat itself is 3 characters. You can compose your own party, but for the sake of the demo, they give you 3 characters and like 3 different team compositions that are present just for the sake of getting people into the demo and playing and leaving. It did give us a note in here that yes, you will be able to customize your team freely when the final game does release. There's some other pretty interesting stuff in there too. Cloud was equipped with a morph materia in the open world section. Meaning that you're going to have some interaction with enemies a bit different than just stealing. Although I did not see the steal materia, you know, actively.
I don't remember if Morph
Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth
was in remake.
More base magic materia. We see
Empowerment.
Red 13's actually equipped with Comet, and he has other ones like Bravery and Faith that are stat modifiers.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Changed the way some green materia.
Hey, dude, you want to hear some cope? You want to hear some cope from me? So Bravery and Faith, right? Which is also a mechanic in FFT. What if this was a subtle hint that they were going to remake FFT, Bravery and Faith? Because they do the exact same thing in that game too. Now that is the most potent cope of all time.
Faith that are stat modifiers. And they've changed the way some green materia works, where you actually get one materia that has fire and ice on it. I think other ones I've seen in other parts of the demo might have had 2 other spells combined at the same time. So it looks like they're trying to give us more ways to put materia in there without taking up too much space. The Gil Toss materia is back. It's called Spare Change, and there's a limit siphon materia, which allows you to essentially give your limit break to another character in the party, or like take their limit and give it to yours. Pretty interesting, like combat
Walmart
synergy stuff going
Fury
on
brand.
Here. And last but not least, the purple materia is getting a little interesting and action gamey, where you can have characters that are not currently like utilized by yourself, that you're not actively using, to use auto abilities.
Yeah, from FF10.
Auto unique ability, those ones where you kind of like synergize with other team members. And another one that allows them to use their weapon ability automatically. So you don't have to specifically always switch over to them and pilot them in combat to use that stuff. Again, there's just more things in battle that will automate the situation. That are...
Is it just me, or did Barrett like get younger in this game? I don't know.
Great. Like that's good, because sometimes you don't feel like you need to switch out constantly, or you can just, you know, not use these and do it manually yourself. So that's about it. And you know, I'm trying to think if I missed anything. There is so many different things.
Black don't crack.
I didn't even really talk about limit breaks. Yeah, limit breaks are functioning in the same way. Characters have effectively very similar limit breaks as they did in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1. But I'm sure that's going to change later on. We only get to store so many, like 1 per character right now. But yeah, there's just, you know, a lot more things. Like, let's just take the systems that we had before and make them much less restrictive, is what I feel with the combat of Rebirth. And I think the only gripes I have sometimes is you have to still utilize certain characters for certain situations. Cloud did have some new abilities, like a giant fire sword thing that did cost ATB, but launched his ass like way in the air, and you can actually hit the opponents with it.
That was
if they were flying. So I'm like, oh, that's really good for that. And I think it's just going to get down to utilizing all these things against certain enemy types and feeling out what is good. When is Red 13 going to be good against these characters that sort of like push you away? Or...
Oh, damn it. They still got the damage gates, man. I don't like that. God damn it, dude. I fucking hated that about Remake. The damage gates. You want to talk about gripes? That's a huge gripe of mine. Because you don't get... I mean, yeah, you can like... beat them faster, but like, why have that? You know, I just don't. I don't understand. The damage gates are. See the little no sign, the no thing. That means you can't anything that you do. Look, sure you can build ATB and stuff like that while that's going on, but you don't get rewarded for like purely optimizing the boss, and I fucking hate that. In my opinion, I just don't see a point. You know, it's like you want to show off like the different phases in a boss fight, like what they can do, phase transitions, all that, you know, the typical thing like that, but it doesn't reward the sweaty fucking people like me, which is probably why I'm griping about it. But to be fair, a lot of people griped about it as well, you know. And like on a casual playthrough, who the fuck is gonna like one-shot the boss? You know, like just it's really not a good thing. It's just not a good mechanic.
Crazy defensive. When am I going to be able to actually utilize Aerith? Oh, I forgot to mention it. When Aerith is in your party, she has specifically, her team attack is a bodyguard thing. So everyone remembers the cover materia from Ff7. No, they turned that into like a team ability that she can do that costs literally nothing. And if you press it as she's about to be attacked, Cloud will jump in front of her and start auto-deflecting and guarding against all these attacks, preventing you from like missing your casts with Aerith. It's great, dude. Like, there's so many cool abilities that are in here that allow the party to really feel like they're organically working together. I absolutely felt it, and I feel like I wasn't even utilizing all of this stuff. Again, I think I do have a gripe with this. At the first playthrough of the Demo 1 and Demo 2, it was kind of hard. It was kind of like, dang, this is sort of difficult, you know? We're kind of getting our butts kicked. We have to heal ourselves. By the way, there is no auto-healing. It just like the original Final Fantasy VII, if you're in between fights, you got to heal yourself. So they don't expect it to play like an MMO in these big open-world environments. Doesn't really work that way. So my first time through, characters were dying a bit, and I was having to heal them a whole bunch just because I didn't realize that you can press these R1 abilities and
what are you saying, my dude?
And like all this stuff at the same time. So on the subsequent playthroughs, as I fly through it, stuff was getting messed up. Properly utilizing the stagger gauge like Part 1 or Final Fantasy VII Remake, and utilizing the new abilities to get characters from the ground into the air to attack them, and, you know, actually utilizing the mechanics of the game. And then regular enemies and notorious monsters and bosses started dying hella quick, bro. and I think that's just a thing.
Dude, he's got to be trolling. He's literally complaining about... Okay, the guy mains fighting games, and he's complaining about difficulty. I don't believe that. I think I can't take him seriously. And he mentioned like it doesn't auto heal you outside of battle. It never did. It never auto healed. You had to heal in between fights. He's got to be trolling. He is. I don't believe it.
With a game that gives you so many abilities, I do hope that there is significant challenge later on with Rebirth, and it does properly scale. But this is kind of a similar thing to the original Ff7 Remake, where your first playthrough is kind of tough, but once you really know how to utilize all these systems, man, there's so much stuff to utilize that you begin to beat ass as soon as you go through it like a couple more times. I'm not too worried about that because ultimately 7 Remake did some really smart stuff with difficulty later on, completely changing how you play the game. So this is a small portion with a very limited amount of time. Most people will be playing this. They probably scale it down very much and make it relatively easy so that everyone can beat it. But that's really my only complaint. Outside of that, like I said, there's some technical things. The camera wigs out in combat sometimes and doesn't lock onto the thing when it should, which feels like, oh, that's going to get fixed. And there's other moments where some characters will clip through the environment because you don't fight just on flat surfaces in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. You are on like cliff sides and all of this stuff. So sometimes you just notice like, oh yeah, when you do a big crazy attack, we got pushed into a wall and then it comes back out and it resets. Again, I was told by the devs this build has been around for a long time, and that feels like a polishing phase kind of stuff, and there's still a bit of time before the game comes out.
Well, yeah, we got 6 months.
I'm not super worried about that, and it wasn't a thing that was happening all of the time, but was easily, if I have to mention something that, you know, I wasn't super happy about, it's probably going to be, you know, the little technical hiccups that happen every once in a while. Either way, I am ridiculously excited for more combat and figuring out how characters work together. There are still systems in the menus that they have not explained, and we don't know how they work. I'm just pulling perspective off of what I saw in the menus, but still, there were things they even talked about in interviews
I'll figure it
I
out.
don't think was even
Don't worry.
there.
I'll figure it out.
This actually isn't it. This is just the combat video. There is even more stuff that I could go into a huge swath of information about the world and how you enact with the world in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and how big it's actually going to be, because this demo is super truncated. Like I said, it's a really small portion, and you get demo walls all over the place that specifically say you can't go any further because this is a demo. And there's specific areas that normally you should be able to go up and access, but you can't go because it is a demo.
That's fair.
Des were telling us specifically that, yeah, you're spending like 45 minutes in this really small area, and it's significantly bigger than this. So how the eventual open world acts and, you know, what it's going to be, we can hopefully get a better picture of how that's going to work in the next video when we go into all the specific world collection and interacting and climbing and all this stuff that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's big open map is going to set up. Anyway, thank you dudes a ton for any thumbs up on the video. I'll be back with that other video talking about the world and the interaction as soon as possible. My name is Max, and I'll see you next time.
Oh, gotta go off with a finisher. The swag finisher. I do hope that they include the parry the parry materia, or maybe like a parry mechanic in the game, because that shit was broken